What's up, guys, and welcome to Honest Tattooer. And this week, we are doing some tattoo critiques. Getting your work critiqued is absolutely one of the best things you can do. And if you want to get a critique by some of us, feel free to submit it through our Patreon. This week, we have Matriano.
Hey,
hello, brother.
What's going on?
And we have G Money in the house.
What's up, guys?
And we're looking at some work that was submitted from who?
We got a submission from one of our Patreon supporters, one of our Patreon supporters, Sandra Janchotovic, I think. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering your name. She submitted a couple of pictures that she wants us to critique, tattoos and designs.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
All right, you want to start with this underboob one?
Okay, off the rip, doing a symmetrical design is super stressful.
Yeah.
It just adds so much more when you're going to go full symmetrical. When you do tattoos like this, I think it's nice to go full symmetrical, but even if you do a slight variation that is so minute, but it still looks exactly the same, no body is absolutely perfectly symmetrical. So just changing some things intentionally, just so minute, so each side can have its own little bit of originality, you could say, where it's slightly different than the other side. Like one petal is just slightly differently drawn, but it's still in the same exact place. For some reason, I feel like it makes it feel like it breathes better. I don't know if that's the correct way to put it. It's a way where I feel like when it's almost perfect, it creates visual tension.
That I agree with. I agree that if you're not perfect, but you're just like slightly off,
yeah,
that's more uncomfortable than just purposely having something asymmetrical.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I agree with a design like this in this spot being purposefully asymmetrical.
Well, I wouldn't say fully not making fully asymmetrical, but just making it so it's not just mirrored. That's what I mean. So it's not just mirrored. Like you can still keep everything exactly where it's at, but just put variations maybe even in the two main flowers, just in the most subtle way.
I know what you mean. It's it's still gonna look the same, balanced.
Yeah.
On both sides, but just variances on how a leaf may lay.
Yeah.
Or different petal structure on the left versus the right.
I don't know if I agree with that.
But it's not a must.
Yeah, it's not a must, but
you can have two mirroring sides in a design, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel that kind of applies more. I'm going to have to agree with John a little bit here because we're looking at something that's organic and it's kind of it's nature, it's plant life. Now, if it was let's say a design
it's
that
organic,
is a bunch
but
of,
it's so designy. No,
of course. Yeah. But if you were looking at let's say, underboob tattoo, that's a design of sacred geometry or just pure line work and pattern work, you probably want identical sides.
I feel like that's where this is headed though. I feel like this is in between that kind of geometry and organic floral.
No, and I'm saying I'm not hating on it.
No, I mean, I actually like this design.
Yeah, I like it.
Solid black part of this, which is the most graphic part, that part needs to be perfectly symmetrical if that's what you're going to go for.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though it's a nice design, that's where this design falls short as a tattoo. I feel like, that little bit right there, dead center, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. There's ways to avoid having to be so perfect. So it's do those things intentionally in your designs where you're oh man, that's going to be really hard to pull off, exactly perfectly symmetrical. Maybe stay away from it.
See, I would agree with you there. I would say in a situation like this where you have that shape right dead smack in the center, that has almost that vase shape, it's almost impossible to get both sides. Try to draw a bottle, right? The curve on both sides at the tip and everything, perfect.
Perfect.
That's really difficult to do. So maybe, you're right. In a situation like that, in that center piece, maybe make that more organic where it's not so perfectly symmetrical, but I would still keep the flowers on the side symmetrical.
Yeah.
Because I feel like your eyes aren't going to look at both of those at the same time, the same way that you're going to look at the sides of the centerpiece at the same time.
Well, I think you can still achieve visual symmetry without it having to be mirrored.
Yeah, I get that.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what I think. It's you can still achieve a lot of it feels exactly the same. It's when you see two statues, on the side of a building that are kind of mirroring each other, but they're not exactly the same statue.
Yeah.
But your visual, the visual relationships to both of them just immediately goes like, oh yeah, that feels right. You know? There's also a lot of lines in this tattoo, which is, like we said, it's a hard spot to tattoo. There's so many lines that, like, even though like the directional lines for the flowers, they look good. One, they're too dense.
Yeah.
They should have been done with like either a thinner needle or a lighter wash, because they look too thick and too dense. And in this tattooer's case specifically, like I could tell that they were kind of struggling with these fine, thin lines, like they're just overall, when you look around, like they're not consistent in almost any part of it. The bolder lines are a little bit more consistent, but the really thin ones aren't.
There's a lot of places where the lines don't connect.
They don't connect.
So they just
they have too much wiggle on them. And like, for example, there's like parts of these petals where the lines is supposed to be a curve and they're just kind of really straight, and it's losing the effect that it's supposed to create. So I feel like things like that, it's like, think about how to make your job simpler, easier, and easier in tattooing. It's usually better.
Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but one last thing I want to say about this design is going with the symmetry. We've touched on this before. I'm specifically looking at the two leaves on the outside of the centerpiece, right? It looks like she had some trouble lining those out, and she tried to fix it with maybe either going back over the line or shading off the line, which is fine. If you got to fix your mistakes, that's cool. But whatever you do on one side, you got to do on the other.
Yeah.
So even if you didn't make the mistake on the right side, fix it as if you did make the mistake on the right side.
Yeah.
Not bad considering the difficulty of the spot in the area, though.
Yeah, no, like overall, I think that the design is really great. I think, honestly, if it were just a little bit lighter inside those petals,
it would just read better.
So much nicer.
Yeah.
But overall, I think good job. It's not a bad tattoo.
It's not a bad tattoo.
No. Good job.
And so, when we do critiques, everything comes from a place of like, hey, this is good most of the time. It's like, this is good. How can it be better? So, we're not here to just tell you all of the great things about it. We're here to tell you how you can make this tattoo better, and just try to be respectful and considerate of your work. But at the same time, you're here to get better. We're not here to cater to anything else other than just, hey, let's tell you how these tattoos can get better.
Absolutely. And we appreciate your vulnerability, because it's not easy
to have your work critiqued.
Yeah. And I mean, that's part of the growth, I guess, if you want to grow.
And, extra props for letting us do this on the podcast and letting other people see your work too. So it's not just getting critiqued, but having a lot of eyes on it now too.
Yeah.
It's hard. Cool. Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, moving on. We got this frog eating some noodles. You see that one, Gabe?
Yep.
So right off the bat, something that she did well in this tattoo that she failed on was making those light lines light in the noodles.
Exactly.
That's the effect that you should have had in the other tattoo. But you nailed it on this one.
Super wispy, super thin.
Follows the shape of the curve.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time trying to figure out if half of this is healed, if the whole thing is healed, if it's
I was literally going to mention
it's like a touch up or something.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard to tell.
What I was going to say is that it looks to me like the line work had already been healed.
Yeah.
Or it's already healed line work. And then they went in with the saturation this session. But even then, I will say that the line work leaves me wanting more. So like in essence, I think like a lot of the thin lines and even some of the thicker ones, I feel they could be way cleaner.
Yeah, that's
because they're kind of like, when you do lines that aren't solid and they're kind of like spotty, and then you'll tell as they age, some of the line actually starts to disappear.
Yeah. And honestly, even in this tattoo, like the line work doesn't bother me as much as the patchiness and some of the shading, especially like that red tone on the bowl. Like it's not being, you're not shading right up against those lines. Like you can tell from far away that it's like, oh man, just if you would just shade that right up against those lines, pull out a nice round shader, get really up close to there, get it nice and tight. It'll look so much better, so much cleaner. As far as the color theory goes, there's something about these pinks are very fleshy. I think over going a little hotter with those pinks, like that are like in the tongue on the toes of the frog, just going a little reddish.
Yeah.
On those things, even if you have that pink there, but like even on the little bit on the knuckles, on the little tip of the tongue, or just even closer to the mouth, like put a little bit more of like dip into that color that you had for the bowl.
Yeah, it had to be warmer.
Yeah, just a little bit warmer, and then go into this like, really fleshy, pink, and it'll just give it more dimension. I feel like that tone that's on the edge of the bowl is so powerful, but it's nowhere else to be found.
A technique that I like, which I don't know if it'll work with this style, it might be a little bit too illustrative, but especially like what you said, like get a little bit of extra red in the knuckle.
Yeah.
In a frog like this, they have that almost like translucent kind of fingertips. Mm-hmm. So I would go with this one, go a little bit redder on the tips, but leave a highlight. So you see that kind of like shimmer on it.
Yeah.
And then kind of fade that into that kind of peachy color.
Yeah. The last thing I think I got to say about this whole tattoo is like, man, just fucking wipe this thing, dude. It's fucking bleeding still. And you took this photo and walked away. You know what I'm saying? Like it's your work. If you worked really hard on it and you're proud of it,
You're talking about in the face, that red right there?
I think that's just chewed up.
I think that's just chewed up and it's bloody. And same
See, I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be like some blush or something.
No,
that
looks like a little chunk of blood.
Like a little kiss mark. No.
Yeah, it looks like a little blood chunk.
So.
Oh yeah. You're right.
It's like a little blood chunk, and it's like, come on, if it's for your portfolio, take better photos. Yeah. Always take better photos.
Again, though, let me just go back and stop beating you up. Design-wise, I think the composition of this is really cool. I love the flow of it. It has like this kind of, it takes your eye around the image in this kind of circular pattern, like the back of the frog, into the bowl, into the curl of the noodle, like all that kind of stuff. That all
flows real nice.
Yeah, it flows really, really nice.
Yeah, it's pretty balanced. So good job on the illustration there.
Yeah, the illustration's cool. And I like that, the foot of the frog's like hanging out on the backside of it and the noodle's coming over it. So it gives it a little bit more depth. And the design's fun. It's a cool design. Just little technical things that will make this design better.
For sure.
All right, so before we move on to the next image, I just want to remind everybody, if you want to have your work critiqued by us on the show, or even just privately, if you wanted to send us a message, be like, hey, can you take a look at our work? We prioritize that with our Patreon members. So if you want to help support the show, get critiqued, there's extra content on there also you can check out. Head over to patreon.com/honest tattooer. And then, like I said, if you wanted to get some critiques, just send us a message and we'll help you out.
Yeah, we love to look at people's work. Helping people is one of our biggest motivations, but for doing Honest Tattooer. So having you guys send your work, we can talk about it. And that's how we all grow. So next up is the skull, which
I think this is the best one we've seen so far.
Oh man, I don't know.
You don't like it?
I don't like this one.
Ah man, I like this one.
I don't like this one. There's things about it that I do like, kind of like the other pieces, but this one grinds my gear more than.
That's pretty good.
I like the frog better.
I think this is cleaner than the frog.
I think this one's cleaner than the frog.
It's cleaner than the frog, but I guess I just don't like the skull face so much. I don't like the skull.
Okay.
I don't like the skull.
Because of the anatomy of it, or you just...
The anatomy of it is weird, and then just like the overall, like the way that like the teeth are illustrated and the eyes of the skull are like, like there's parts of this where it feels really flat and parts where it tries to not be flat.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Sure. And I'm like, I wish it was one or the other. Either be really fucking flat or draw this thing up and make it feel more dimensional,
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I feel like that's just stylistic preference. I don't mind that so much. I think the only thing that I would say that I feel like needs improvement, and again, this might just be opinion, stylistic choice. I want to see some contrast between the skull, the flowers, and those leaves. Like I would make those leaves dark.
Yeah.
Right?
At least
show some separation between the three of those
separation
elements.
Between that. This is something really simple here. If the inside of the skulls are that dark, right? Why is inside of the nostrils of the skull not just dark. As dark?
Yeah.
Where it should technically be darker,
There should be more shadow in there.
Yes, there's way more shadow inside of the nostrils than it would be in the eye sockets. The eye sockets still get some light in there.
Yeah, if you look at a skull, in most situations, it's really not that dark inside those eye sockets.
It's not that dark.
What bothers me about this design, even though I do like it, is the shading from skull to flower and leaves transitions. I feel like it can be a bit smoother and less abrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or more abrupt, like just have like a hard cast shadow.
Or that.
Really, like something
I agree.
strong.
I agree. Or that.
Yeah, we're stuck in the middle.
We're stuck in the middle there. But
With the flowers,
I don't hate it.
Little things like that. I think they're really rough in this tattoo is multiple perspectives on different elements. Like the flower that's on the top. Like the center is kind of facing out, but then the middle of it doesn't feel like it's facing in the same direction. Same thing with the flower on the bottom. Like it's kind of facing towards me, but the center of it feels like it's facing on a complete different direction.
Yeah, I see what you're pointing out.
I see what you're pointing out also.
Fernando, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
It almost feels like, thank you.
Thank you.
Either that, yes. The way that I see that is almost like a Venus flytrap, where instead of that center being round, it looks more like it's like clamping.
Like clamping down. Yeah. That's when it kind of feels like. And then the same thing is happening then like with the skull itself. Like when you look at the front teeth, the outside teeth, where it's the furthest edge, the outside edge of the skull, that's already going back. The part that's most in the front of that skull should be the two front teeth. And it looks like those outside teeth are like competing with the front teeth.
Yeah, perspective is a little skewed.
Feeling my teeth and my tongue right now.
And like that's what it is. It's like little perspective issues. Like look at the bottom teeth of that jaw. The two teeth that are in the first two teeth look the same, exactly the same.
Yeah.
They should be smaller set than the ones at the top.
Yeah, top teeth are bigger than the bottom teeth.
Yeah.
Or they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be there's supposed to be a nice difference between the top teeth versus the bottom teeth, the bottom row.
So you just said bottom jaw, and now I can't unsee it. That bottom leaf underneath the jaw.
Yeah.
That line shaping out the leaf looks like it's the same line that would be shaping out the bottom of the jaw.
Yeah. So that's why it's giving it I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's been bothering me in a sense where it seems like that jaw is too big for that, and basically it's like you said, the line of the leaf is covering what could be the actual chin line.
Yeah.
So it's giving me a sense of like that there's more chin to that skull, and that would make it too big, too large.
Yeah, that leaf that we're talking about right there doesn't even need to be there at all.
At all. No. Doesn't need to be there whatsoever.
It really doesn't. There should be no leaf there on the bottom chin.
And I was zooming in. I can't tell if that brown spot is a mole or if it's blood or what.
But see that right there.
Oh, it's just shading.
I don't know, because it looks like she lined around it to not line into it. Like she's purposely avoiding tattooing that spot, which is making the jaw feel super awkward again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe this is just a placement issue too. Like if that is a mole, I get it. Sometimes the clients are like, I don't want to see this mole anymore. Cover it up. But you also don't want to tattoo that either. But I don't know. The placement of that just kind of throws me off on that one.
Maybe it's a mole. I can't tell.
I don't think that you're lining confidently. And you can tell a lot that you're going over lines to try to clean them up. And then in turn, you're making certain lines bolder that don't really need to be that bold. And then they're very inconsistent. And then there's lines where if you're using the effect of like, I'm going to make these outside lines bolder to keep the inside lines of the tattoo thinner, it's going to kind of kill that effect, especially if you don't continue to repeat that effect in other places. Like, you did that with the eyes where you lined it with a like really bold black outline, but then you didn't do the same thing with like the nose bone area. But that would have been another way to keep harmonizing like patterns, repeat patterns in your tattoos, repeat, things, and make sure that you're making that same decision and you carry it throughout. If you decide to do something, make sure it's nice and consistent throughout.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else?
No. But overall, like you said, Matt, this was my favorite.
Yeah. Honestly, this is my favorite one so far.
Peony.
Is this all the same artist?
Yes, all the same artist.
Well, first and foremost, what I can say is what I'm not too thrilled about this tattoo is the basically the varying proportions of the petals. Some are short and stumpy, others are big and flourishing. So it doesn't feel like a very balanced flower. Even in nature,
It's very top heavy.
it's very, top heavy. Very top heavy. But even in nature, when you see like, like a peony,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, even if nature displays a design that's a little more erratic, it's still perfect because the petals, I don't know how I can really like explain the proportion theory on petals and flowers, but when your eyes see something in real life, it's like, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think in this tattoo, like there's a level of like almost like they wanted to kind of new schooly a little bit,
Yeah.
like get a little bit of wonky, get a little bit crazy and fun with like the perspective and the length of things. But I still like, it's really important to know what you're drawing, and then you're able to like break those rules a little bit. And like, for example, like the inner petals almost feel just as long or longer than some of those outer petals.
Yeah, and they should be shorter.
And they should be shorter.
Especially that.
Yeah, there should be
bottom
varying
one.
sizes.
Oh yeah, that bottom one looks like it's like the shortest little petal. And then the one right above it, it's like an inner petal is huge,
Right.
So that messes heavily with like the way that everything feels, And then the leaves.
The leaves, I mean, I can't stress this enough when you guys and I mean this everybody, even myself. When anyone is doing flowers, do not slack on the leaves.
Yeah.
The leaves are just as important. It's like when somebody's doing a portrait and you go and you're doing great. You go ham on the details, the nose, the eyes and everything. And then when you get to the hair, you slack on the
Rush
hair.
it.
You rush it, you slack on the hair, you don't give it enough attention.
Yeah.
And it basically crowns the head.
Yeah.
So leaves are like
They're just as important.
they're just as important. And like these are very like small, they leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah, they're
leaves.
very underpowered. in
Very,
this design.
very. I feel like if you had better leaves, like you could have saved the overall design because there's a lot of design wise things you could compensate to help
Yeah.
balance the design with leaves. But, I feel like, the design is exposed, so.
That tiny little leaf back there that looks like it's barely peeking out of there. I'm like, why is that even there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need that leaf there.
Yeah.
You don't need it at all.
Yeah. So these are the points I would make with this design. Those big leaves in the up on the like background on top. Mm-hmm. I feel like they either don't need to be there or they need to be a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I would probably even just replace those and put them on the bottom. It's just like the perspective.
the petals, the petals.
The petals. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, the petals. I feel like the perspective that we're looking at it, you wouldn't see that.
Right.
That's, I don't know, just
It would be shorter.
either shorter or not even there.
The line work too. You gotta really practice and focus a lot on your line work because from what I've noticed with all the designs is that you need to work on your outlining with thin needles, which is a very, very hard thing to do. Outlining with thin needles really exposes your technique a lot or lack thereof. Thin needles in tattooing are hard to pull. They're hard to keep clean. So, I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's very easy to pull a fat 9 through 14 round liner and make it look clean. It's easy. It's easier.
As long as your
Easier,
machine's
yeah.
hard enough.
Yeah.
To do it.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot easier.
Because the thing is, it's easier to go back in there. Let's say you pull one of those lines, right? And it's still kind of shallow and it's not dark enough, right? It's easy to visually go on top of that and make a line solid, but and connect that line when you're going back over it. Mm-hmm. It's much harder to follow through. And like, let's say you're pulling a very thin line, right? And you're trying to make it crispy, but yet on your stroke of pulling that line, you stop halfway, because you can't follow through. Because sometimes it's hard to pull a long line with the needle. And then you have to go back and connect that. That's hard. And I can see in many instances here where you tried to connect it, but you didn't meet it at the same point. So it doesn't look clean.
Yeah.
Or you didn't make it from one edge of a line all the way to another edge of the design when you're pulling that line in through, like, let's say a petal.
So
So it's difficult, but
here's a tip. And this design has that element that I'm about to explain. If you're going to design something that you know you're going to have small, thin lines in it, make your design work to your advantage so that you can pull those lines in one shot and you don't have to stop in between.
Right.
So if you have a design, let's say you're doing like a big petal and you know that while you're tattooing it, you can't pull this line, this thin line from one end of the petal to the other, break it up with something, do a flip, do something that you can kind of stop that line halfway through without having to connect it again, interrupt that line with something else.
Right.
Yeah.
But this design, I mean, these are small enough that you should be able to pull that line from one end to the other with one stroke.
They're really stroked. Yeah,
Yeah.
They're short lines. With my biggest beef with these short lines in this tattoo is that a lot of them, they're directional lines that are going the wrong direction.
Yeah, they're not flowing in the right direction.
They're going in all different directions.
Yeah.
All
it's-
different directions.
It's not
you know?
following the curvature of the petal or the flop or how it's like folding.
You should know the shape of a petal when it's completely flat. Like, what is the shape of this petal when it's flat? And then you can think about, if I fold this petal, then this is the direction that
How
it's
are
gonna
these
move.
lines going to bend
Yeah.
with this?
Because all of these petals, they're all slightly different. They don't feel like they're from the same flower.
Yeah.
There's not enough consistency from each petal. There's a few of them that look good, and they have a good general shape, but they don't all feel like they belong to the same flower. There's not enough consistency. And I think that's my same problem with like the leaves. They also don't feel like they belong to the same flower. Like that leaf on the very top feels like it's from a rose, and then the bottom one feels like it's from a peony. And then that other little tiny leaf feels completely disconnected. It's not even remotely close to size as the other two. So it's like, it just feels strange. So like having a little bit of consistency, a few petals that are very similar to each other, even if they have the minute change, will start giving your work a little bit more harmony.
Yeah.
And there's the flash.
There's the flash of that froggy.
And there's the flash of the froggy.
So look at that. I was right. That is a blush on her on the frog's face.
Yeah, that is a little bit of blush there.
Okay.
Man, I gotta say,
know-
I really like the design.
The design's awesome.
The
That's what I've
design's
said
really
before.
cool.
So check this out. Your design, the drawing skills, the illustration. I mean, I think we were spot on in saying that we like the design because, you can design.
Yeah,
And that's good.
cool
Now
design.
your tattooing just needs to catch up with your designing. That's all I'm going to say.
So I'm looking at the tattoo while we're looking at the design also.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of differences that are made in the tattoo design that's making it not look as good as the flash.
As the flash, yeah.
Yeah.
The green is completely different. So it's
Totally different.
Totally different shade of green.
Yeah.
The yellow, and it's like, you have a really nice, like almost like a golden yellow type of yellow. And then the yellow that you use on the tattoo looks more like a bright yellow.
Yeah, it's like a bright yellow instead of like a true gold.
Like a true gold, yeah, true
sunflower,
gold.
almost like a sunflower, like eternal sunflower.
Yeah,
It's like
sunflower
kind of
or
like
true gold.
watery, whitish kind of color.
Yeah.
And I keep saying noodles. I'm assuming that they're noodles.
Yeah, those are noodles.
You've got that black shading coming out from the bowl in the design, but it's not there in the tattoo.
It's not there at all. And it looks so good in the flash design,
Yeah. And back to what I said about the line work. It's hard to pull those thin lines, and this design required a lot of clean, thin lines.
Yep.
Like let's say a tight 3 or something like that, right? Like
Yep.
a super tight 3. It's hard to line with that, you guys, and it's hard to be consistent. So like the noodles, they required like you could still get away with doing a full strength black, but with a very, very thin needle, you can still achieve what you're looking for.
Oh yeah, and it's crazy because like in the tattoo, they did so many thin lines, and in the flash, there's only a few bolder, simple lines, and that feels so much better.
It does.
I still know it's noodles. You didn't have to draw
Yeah.
every line for every little stringy noodle piece that's in there. Yeah. Just a few, and that's good enough. I feel like it made it solid.
Yeah.
And then a big thing, like, man, that back left hand of the frog, like it's nice and shaded, all the way to like where the fingers kind of start of the frog. And on the tattoo design that you made, you put a way more pink, and it's not that strong of a pink.
I feel like I know why she did that, because she didn't want
Green on green.
green on green.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that was the right choice to make in the tattoo
Yeah.
situation. But I do agree that it looks better on the design than
it looks better on the. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even in the design, like it doesn't even bother me, the green on green. It would have just been a matter of like using a little bit lighter of a green,
right?
On the arm than on the leg,
Yeah.
And that would have been fine, And I feel like that would have felt just overall better. And I do like the solid, strong black spots on that frog design, and that I don't see them strong enough.
So I think that goes back to what we were saying before in the tattoo, that maybe these lines are healed and maybe those spots are healed, and then she's coloring over those healed spots.
Which, like, if you do things like that, it is worth your time to put that black back in there.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
put that black back in there.
So about the color, I get it. Inks are expensive. Not everybody has the entire palette from whatever brand you're using. If you make a design and you really like the colors that you use in the design, but you don't have those colors bottle wise in your ink, make it.
Literally make it. I mean
that's true. That olivey green is super easy to make. There's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could take the green that you have, this bright green, add a little bit of red, add a little bit of black. It'll give you that kind of olivey tone, or even a little bit of orange, give you that olivey tone.
Yep.
You can invest in an ink mixer for like $8 on Amazon. Just
just do that.
Mix a couple of colors in your ink cap. I used to be scared to mix my own colors, because then if you have to touch it up later on, you're like, oh fuck,
how did I do that?
Yeah, but
I just take a color. You know what I do nowadays? I mix my colors a lot, but it's only because I do have a little bit of knowledge with color theory, color mixing, complementary colors. Like, so if that's something that you haven't really looked into, you should.
Definitely.
And it's not intimidating. It's very easy to do. I'm like on Triano's boat right now, where we both have little ink mixers, and we'll mix it up. And so I remember I usually just take a picture of the bottles that I have laid out.
Yeah. Or, if you feel like, if you're not confident that you think that you might need to touch up, write it down, take notes, be like, all right, I did half a cap green,
put it on your drawing in the iPad, literally.
A drop or two of black, like just write it all down, take notes. That way you can come back to it later if you need to make it again.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can go ham and just make a little bottle of that color that you have it for next time.
True. But yeah, it's worth it, guys. Sometimes.
Man, the more I look at this frog tattoo, the more I'm like, oh man, it was so close. It was so close. Like, it's like all these little small decisions of just like these tones, and like it always irks me when I see a really nice design and I'm like, you drew this and then you tattooed it and you had your drawing right there, but then you're not looking at your drawing.
Yeah.
Like it's like, it almost seems like you just gave up on following your own plan. Like you made a plan and then you were like, nah, fuck this plan.
Yeah.
Because there's just certain little things of like, oh man, on the drawing, you decided to shade this all the way up to this line. And then back on the tattoo, I'm like, you stopped there too early.
Yeah.
That belly specifically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It looks so much better with that green just coming all the way up to the belly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what machine you're using, what needles you're using, but what I can say is, and this is just me assuming, right? When you're packing color, maybe you're running your machine too fast. Maybe you need to slow it down.
Maybe slow it down some.
Slow it down. Take your time.
Or just slow your hand speed down,
Yeah, slow your hand speed down. Slow the machine down. Because you'd be surprised sometimes with packing color how much a difference slowing the machine and or your hand speed and how you're doing your circles and your sweeps.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I have the critical torque that I'm coloring with, and it has like in big digital display my power that's coming out of the machine, and whenever we do reels in the shop, or if I'm posting a story up and I'm showing that I'm tattooing, like that display is right there up and running. And I got a lot of people email or messaging me, and they're like, "Dude, why are you running your machine so slow?"
Yeah.
Because it packs color good when it's slow.
Good when it runs slow. Slow and punchy.
So I pack fast my colors, but my machines run slow, if that makes any sense. All my machines hit hard and they hit slow and punchy, because a lot of the pigments that I use are very thick pigments. I use a lot of powder pigments. So they require like super slow and punchy machines. But even then, like if I was just using like any predispersed pigments like Fusion, World Famous, Eternal, any of those, I don't think my technique would change too much.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
They would just fly in faster.
They would just fly in faster. But it's like, sometimes, run your machines a little bit slower when you're packing color. It all changes when you're doing black and gray, of course, but it's different. Two different worlds. Okay.
Overall, though, I think your designs are really cool. Like we said before, I think trust yourself. It seems like you're lacking a bit of confidence in your tattooing, which I don't know how long you've been tattooing. You didn't tell me, but that comes with experience, obviously.
Yeah.
But you know what you're doing. Like you have fairly solid designs already planned. Everything is like the work is done for you. All you got to do is just take it from your screen into the skin. Yeah. Don't change anything on the way there.
Yeah,
for sure. And keep tattooing and good luck in your journey because we're all in it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening.
All right.
Like we said before, if you want to help out the show, go to patreon.com/honest tattooer, become a Patreon supporter. We have lots of extra content on there that doesn't make it into the shows. Sometimes it's secret stuff. Sometimes Jon takes his shirt off.
You'll have to go join to see.
And then we have like these critiques. They get prioritized with our Patreon supporters first. So if you want to get some stuff looked at and critiqued by us, that's where to head over.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Peace.